YouTube family, what's going on? So this video, I want to talk about if God is placing it on your heart to leave your hometown. Now I had a conversation the other day with someone, and they asked me, how did you do it? Like, how are you not scared to just up and leave and go somewhere that you, never been before, and all these different things, right? And I've spoken about this on my channel before, but I guess I need to clarify. Fear was definitely a thing in my life at that point. I had been walking with, God for probably 3 years at that point, but I was still, you know, I still faced a lot of things like worry, doubt, and you know what I'm saying, all of these different things. So, fear was definitely an issue at that point. So I wanted to clarify, it's not like I was just the most courageous person and, God said, hey, go to Texas. And I just, all right, Lord, and just up and left. Nah, the Lord first started speaking to me about leaving Florida to go to Texas in 2021. I didn't step out on faith to do so until 2023. So there was a 2-year period that the Lord had to do some convincing and shaping and, all of that kind of stuff to get me to actually make that move. And to be honest, a lot of the convincing and shaping that he did was just making me uncomfortable in that land. He did a lot of shaking up, you know what I'm saying? He did a lot of, exposing and removing relationships in my life that I had at that time. And the reason being is because, truth be told, their voice carried more weight in my life than God's did at that point. You know what I'm saying? These were people that I had known for years, even before I started walking with God, and I felt like they were sensible people, and, their voice mattered. I felt like I could trust their opinion. It wasn't until he started exposing certain aspects of those relationships that I got to see, like, okay, Lord, I get why you did that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I see why that was necessary, because a lot of the times, the people that I was dealing with at that time, I didn't know that they were benefiting from keeping me in a place of stagnation. I didn't know that these were people who were working witchcraft against me and, paying people to do witchcraft and all of that other stuff because they benefited from me not being able to move forward in my life. I didn't realize that. So God had to do a lot of exposing and shaking up. And in doing so, that caused me to kind of draw back and have to depend more on him. I had to lean into him more because now at this point, I don't really have any relationships to lean on. I don't have anybody to talk to, but I'm still going through all of these different things in my life. So I needed a source of strength. I needed a source of hope. And that caused me to have to press into him more. And so one of the biggest tools that God used to convince me to move from Florida to Texas was his word. Being that the relationships that I used to be in had got, cut off, I started leaning into his word more. I started reading his word daily. And in his word, I got to see, okay, Lord, what you're asking me to do is not abnormal. From Genesis all the way to the New Testament, this is something that God would ask his chosen people to do. From even at the beginning with Abraham, he told him, hey, I believe it was Genesis 12. I could be wrong. Hopefully I'm right. But he said, hey, Abraham, I need you to leave your father's land and go to a place that I will show you. You know what I'm saying? So from the beginning, he was doing that kind of stuff. And when Jesus came to the disciples, he said, hey, leave your wives, leave your houses, leave your children, leave this and come with me. You know what I'm saying? And so I got to see in his word that what God was asking me to do was not abnormal. So that was the first thing that really kind of settled my spirit on it and kind of, helped me to say, okay, Lord, I see I'm not tripping. I see I'm not crazy. This is actually something that's normal with someone that chosen. And then, but there was still unfavorable circumstances that God allowed me to be placed in within that 2-year period that, kind of shaped my decision to go ahead and step out in faith, because God will use uncomfortableness to move a person, to get your attention. You know what I'm saying? Like I spoke in a video the other day, comfort is it can be one of our biggest enemies. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to give that up. And so God a lot of times will allow a person to be uncomfortable in a certain place. So they will, step out and make that move that he's asking them to make. Now, let me say this. For me personally, stepping out in faith and coming to Dallas, Texas was one of the greatest experiences I've personally had in this walk and in my life. Now, don't get it twisted. It was not rainbows and butterflies. You know what I'm saying? Just like the Israelites coming out of Egypt into the promised land, it was giants in the land. It was the same way for me. Not literal giants, but there was a lot of battles that I had to face going into this unknown territory. You know what I'm saying? That's just what it was. But the 2 years before I left, there was a lot of battles as well. And those battles helped shape and build my faith. You know what I'm saying? Those battles helped me to see that God is really with me, that God will not leave me, and that God will surely deliver me. I got to see his word come true. You know what I'm saying? And that played a huge part in me saying, all right, Lord, I'm not sure what's going to happen when I get out here, but one thing I do know is that you are with me. One thing I do know is that you are for me. So I'm going to trust you. And he proved that to me by allowing me to be placed in battles. So if your life feels like, it's just a battleground at the moment, a lot of times, and you know that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Let me say that. But you're still having to fight a lot, it's preparation. You know what I'm saying? God wants to show you some things. He wants to show you that, if he is with you, it don't matter what kind of battle you go up against, you're going to get the victory. You know what I'm saying? And I used to hear that. I used to hear pastors say that, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But once I experienced it, I went through battle after battle after battle within that 2-year period, but I always won. I always came out of it. You know what I'm saying? And pretty much unscathed. You know what I'm saying? It may have been a little bumps or bruises here and there, but for the most part, you know what I'm saying? What was supposed to happen never happened. What the enemy had planned to happen anyway. You know what I'm saying? Never happened. Things that I had feared would happen, or things that I was worried about would happen, never happened. God had to allow me to experience that. So once, I got to see, okay, God, you will preserve my life. You will, no matter what I'm up against, no matter how much witchcraft they use, no matter how much they try to contaminate my food and all these different things, you'll make sure that I'm all right. And once I got to see that, I was like, okay, Lord, I'll go. You know what I'm saying? And so it took a lot of battles, convincing, signs, wonders. It took a myriad of things to get me to step out in faith. But those things were used collectively, and, it ultimately got me to where I was supposed to go. Now, before I end this video, let me say, when I went out there, I had a book bag of clothing, some luggage of clothing. That was it. You know what I'm saying? And, I remember getting there, I had a couple $100 and I had to get a hotel room. Cause once I got there, the Greyhound bus ride up there, I'm like, this is exciting. I'm nervous, but it's exciting. And, once I finally get there to the Greyhound bus station, first of all, the gang stalking was immediate. Once I got into the area, it was like, so that was a thing. But anyways, I wasn't hearing from the Lord. I'm like, okay, what now, Lord? And nothing. You know what I'm saying? So I ended up getting a hotel room for a few days, and I'm just like praying and, all this other stuff, and nothing. So that was kind of scary, because of course now you're thinking, dang, did I make the wrong decision? Did I really not hear you, Lord? Like, what's going on? Like, where are you at? So that was kind of, terrifying, but I held on to my faith, and I ended up having to go to a shelter. Oddly enough, when I got there, I stayed in the shelter 2 days, or in the hotel for 2 days. And then, they had some bad weather. It's, inclement weather or whatever. So I ended up saying, okay, I'm gonna go to a shelter. Thankfully, it was a little easier to get in because of the inclement weather. So I get to this shelter. like I said, there was some giants in the land. You know, there was a lot going on. There was drugs in there. There was fights. There was, you know, drunkenness. There was homosexuality. I mean, this was an all men's shelter, but it was over 300 and something people there daily. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of different demonic spirits in there. There was a lot of different personalities in there. It was a lot going on. You know what I'm saying? And I remember walking into it like, come on, Lord. You ain't tell me it was going to be like this. Like, this is nonsense. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest, I wanted to run. I wanted to say, man, I'm going back. I'm finna go back. But thankfully, I couldn't. I didn't have the means to go back. You know what I'm saying? So thankfully, that's how it was. You know, I felt I was kind of trapped there, you know, but I stuck it out. And over time, God did miracle after miracle while I was in that situation. I literally didn't have to go outside of this facility for God to do miracles. Like, it was crazy. Everything that I needed, every source of help that you could imagine came to that facility itself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people to help you get insurance, people to help you get licenses, people to help you get birth certificates, people, they had medical assistance, they had eyeglasses, all of these different things that you could need as a person who is homeless and starting over. All of that type of assistance came to that place right there for you. You know what I'm saying? I remember thinking like, Lord, when I get out here, like, how am I going to get around? How am I going to know where things are at and all of this other stuff? And then he sends me to a shelter where everybody there was from the area. So it was nothing to find somebody to show me how to use the bus routes and show, you know what I'm saying? So everything was already in place for me when I got there. I just had to show up, you know what I'm saying? And as long as I stuck to his will and his ways, his plan came to fruition over time, man. These people, I didn't even have to go outside of the facility to get a job. You know what I'm saying? These people had been watching me and they gave me a job and I was able to save money. And then over, a few months, they offered me a position to work the front desk, which was a little more prestigious, I guess you could say. You know what I'm saying? And it was me and another guy that they were training for it. They ended up going with the other guy for the position, but I didn't let that, I was like, you know what, Lord, I'm thankful for the position that I already have. I'm not tripping. I wanted the desk job because it was double the money and it was just, it was a little easier than what they had me doing. But I was like, Lord, I'm just thankful that I have a job. So I'm not tripping. A month later, God rest his soul, the brother John, who they had gave the job to, he ended up going home on a home visit and passing away. So at that point, I was the only person who was already trained to work that position. You know what I'm saying? So they gave it to me. And from that, I did that for like a year and a half and just saved up money and was working on paying off different fines and stuff that I had back in Florida. And then lo and behold, they came to me, the CEO of the actual shelter. He was like, hey, listen, so we got a chaplain. The chaplain is like the highest position you could go under the CEO. And, my heart was set on working in ministry. That's what I want to do, So he comes to me one day at the front desk. He's like, hey, man, listen, we've been watching you. We got one of the chaplains. He's getting ready to retire unexpectedly. So how would you feel about being a chaplain? Now, mind you, as y'all can see, I got tattoos everywhere. I got felonies on my background. I even got tattoos on my face. The youngest person to ever be in that position. And you have to have a college degree. I didn't even have a GED. But this is how God works. When something is for you and you stay in alignment with him, I'm talking about doors that you never expected will be brought to you. And that's exactly what happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, on paper, I did not fit the description for what you had to be in that position. But God didn't care about none of that. You know what I'm saying? If you acknowledge him in all your ways, he will direct your path. And that's exactly what he did. He proved it to me. They put me in a position as a chaplain. Now, mind you, I came there as a homeless person from Florida with nothing. And by the time I left, I was in the highest position you could be under the CEO. As a person with no high school diploma, as a person with felonies on his background, as a person who was a heroin addict for 6 years, you know what I'm saying? So he literally took nothing and made it something just by me being in alignment with his will. So I say all of that to say, if God is asking you to leave, I don't care what he's asking you to leave behind, okay? It's not unusual for him to do something like that. If you read the word of God, you will see that. You know what I'm saying? If he's asking you to do it, there's a reason for it. All right? There's a reason for it. And if you trust him, he will give you a testimony that you can always encourage your soul in. You know what I'm saying? When I go through things right now, I'm able to look back on that moment and say, Lord, you know, like, I know what you're capable of. You get what I'm saying? There is nothing, like, there is no impossible with you. I truly believe that now because I've seen what you have done. You know what I'm saying? And so trust it. Not only will he elevate you and give you, you know, the material things that you need or whatever, but more importantly, he will strengthen the relationship that you have. He will increase the trust that you're going to need in these days that are coming up. You know what I'm saying? And that's the biggest blessing, you know? So if he's asking you to leave something behind, do it, relinquish it. I know it's hard. I know it's scary. You know what I'm saying? But if you trust him, you will not regret it. I can say that. So I pray this message reaches who it needs to reach. God bless you.